Okay, we're live.
Good evening. It's May 4th at 6:31 p.m. This is a meeting of the Finance and Facilities Committee. We'll start with introductions. We'll start with whoever is in the room. Hello, Julia Long. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, I certainly may start. I'm Julia Long and I'm a board trustee and mother of one at Bailey.
Chris?
Chris Ballin, trustee, parent of two at the Woodlands Middle High School. May the 4th be with you.
I'm David Warner, chair of the committee and board member. And let's go back to the back.
Amy Ashford, district treasurer.
Ms. Bull. I'm sorry, there's someone in the waiting room.
Okay, Steve Lewis, town and two at Woodland Middle High School.
Dennis Pugliese, Director of Facilities.
Lisa Raymond, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
And you can't see me in the corner, but I'm Victoria Bolton, Technology Department.
And online we have Walter. You're muted.
You're muted. Great.
Okay,
There.
come on, yeah. Walter Simon, interested, community member.
Good. Fred?
Good evening, everybody. Fred Seba from BBS Architects and Engineers.
Katie?
You're muted.
Hey, Katie.
Sorry, Katie McKee, parent of an 8th grade Woodlands student.
Very good.
Waiting room.
Jessica?
Good evening, everyone. Jessica Muldoon, parent of 2 elementary kids.
And we'll just wait just a second. Hey, Sarah Lazari, we are, well, I gave it away. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Lazari, a parent of 2 in the district.
Wonderful. Anybody I missed? Okay. Next item on the agenda is to go to the minutes of the April 20th meeting. That's right, it's only been, let me share screen here. And we, yeah, you have it right in front of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, this is the April 20th.
Right, it's only been about 2 weeks since our previous meeting. We're going to scroll slowly through it. So basically, in attendance were David Warner, Lisa Raymond, Dennis Pugliese, Chris Valen, Katie McKee, Jessica Muldoon, Megan Hop, Gabriella Barahona, Amy Ashley Moore, Tracy Mears, Victoria Bolton, Steve Morton, Ashley Pineda, Walter Simon, John Kane, Kalyana Badala, Sarah Lazari, Fred Seba, Dr. Linda Iverson, Dr. Christopher Macaluso, Jack Foster, and Elizabeth Sindona. Anybody I missed? Anybody misspelled? Okay, scroll slowly forward. So we adopted the minutes of the previous meeting, discussed a number of finance topics. So the big ticket items are the $500,000 for RJ Bailey from Tom Abenanti's office, or through Tom Abenanti's office in New York State, and another $500,000 from Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins, or through Andrea Stewart Cousins' office to upgrade the Woodlands track. Then Dr. Iverson met with Mary Jane Shimsky. There's the $300,000 to $500,000 item that she was trying to get into the New York State budget. We were in the process of they were passing that budget, I guess, earlier this week. Do we know anything about that in terms of whether anything got into the budget for us?
No.
Okay, so that's still a TBD. Okay, go ahead, next page. We talked about the American Rescue Plan update. The big ticket item there is the $1.6 million, and we found out that we actually could move that $1.6 million over to finance all the ventilation items in phase 1, which means we've freed up $1.6 million that we had from another funding source. I think it might have been 2020, 2021. which can be used elsewhere. So that will come into our discussions tonight. We discussed the audit committee update. We discussed the facilities fund update. We have a nice, very sleek listing from I did have the treasurer do this for all the various projects, and you can look at it. But the basic points were that we had $5.5 million worth of funding encumbered and 5.8 million currently unencumbered. That includes that 1.6 million and a lot from the repair reserve fund that we can do things with. We think we're going to put some of it into a phase 2 bond, but we'll go over that at another time. Go ahead. Dr. Iverson, and we went over the budget, and we've had that budget presentation tonight. We're going to go over the budget collaterals. So we'll see some of the same information a little bit later on. Scroll down a little bit more. We talked about the energy performance contract. Vidala Kalyana from RWE, formerly Con Ed Solutions, came and presented to us. We're on schedule for a June delivery to NYSED. Contract is still outstanding, and we talked about what we needed a sort of interim. Well, I guess we can talk about that a little bit later on. But we did pass a resolution to help them with financing at the last board meeting. Scroll down. We went to Q&A. Then there's some scoping issues, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. I think they've gotten a little better. A few things fell out of the project that we're trying to put back in. The phase 2 construction project, we talked about the bond for that. The 5 years facility plan, we're still waiting for the 5 year strategic plan for the whole district to be adopted, but it's very close now. I think it'll happen in the next meeting. All right, next page. We went down the line through all the various facilities projects. Scroll down. Okay, and then we talked about the grade level reconfiguration plan, and that we need to go and look for some CS Arch facility study information. I don't know if anything has come up from that. Have we found anything yet?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Then we went over smaller projects. The one thing to highlight is the ECP main building. They had gone through during the spring break replacing asbestos tiles in various rooms, and one of them they needed a little more work on the floor. So there was actually a day when a little period of time when there was a cement floor with a rug over it, and then they had to level it out and pull the rug for a little while. And so for a day there was a concrete floor, and then they put the tile over. So that's all fixed. Scroll on down. And I think, yeah, keep going. I think everything else is business as usual. We had other concerns. We discussed the surveillance of school property for people trespassing. Some boulders were placed on the ground. I guess is that to keep people from parking in certain spots?
No, from driving.
Driving across. Okay, good. And then we requested that the Home of the Wise program sign out front at the big entry of the campus. Sun and rain have sort of faded it out, and we're going to repaint that with the new Wise logo. And that was it. Does anybody see anything in this set of minutes that needs to be modified, amended, corrected in any way?
Move that we adopt the minutes as submitted.
Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, adopted. Okay, next item on the agenda. Finance topics. Excuse me. And specifically the adopted budget.
Okay, so,
See that, well, you see that? Yeah, that, right.
okay.
There we go. So there are a number of things in accordance with policy 5120 that are supposed to be available for people to request if they want copies the old way, or available on the district website if they just want to pick them right up. And so I asked that Lisa go over all of those since you've been busily posting things.
Sure.
Take it away, Lisa.
So if you just go up a little bit, Victoria, you'll see that the May 2nd district budget hearing that has now been put on the website, so anybody can go there. If you didn't see the presentation, you can see the PowerPoint is located right there on the website. But the documents that need to be included and available after the budget is adopted are the following. So there's the property tax report card that had to be submitted to New York State by March 1st. I think, Victoria, you can click on it if you want to just real quick. So this is a form that I had to fill out and I submit to the State Education Department, and Dr. Iverson has to certify it for me and submit it. And this just shows you everything about the property taxes, what our reserves are, and what the reserves are used for. Okay, go back to the list. Thank you. And then we have to include the budget notice. This is the budget notice that has to be published after the budget is adopted and the budget hearing. And you're going to find this on our website, and you can also find it in the budget newsletter that is being mailed out to all of our taxpayers. And this basically just shows you this school year's tax levy, what we're proposing for next year, what our tax levy limit is, that we did not go over the tax levy limit. And then we also have to show you what a contingent budget would be. If this budget were to fail, the board put it back up again for a second vote. And if that failed, then we would have to go to a contingent budget. A contingent budget cannot, the tax levy cannot exceed the last tax levy that was approved, and that would be for this school year. We also need to show the public the administrator's salaries. This again is a form that I fill out. It is in the New York State Education Department portal. Once I fill this out with all of the administrator's salaries for next year and their benefits, Dr. Iverson then goes in and certifies and submits it, and it is uploaded to the New York State Education Department. And this is due this Monday, May 8th, but we have already done and submitted it. Then you have the budget summary. Again, this is just a summary of the whole budget in these 6 functions, and then we break it down by object for you, which are the objects are the same for every function, and then we show you the revenue portion of the budget. But then if you want to, you can go back now. If you want to see the detail of the budget, Victoria, go to the next one. Right, yes, right there is the total budget that you can see by budgeted line per function. Right, and it's a comparison of this year's budget to next year's budget, what is proposed. And this is the whole entire budget for that goes all over these 16 pages. Okay, you can go back. And then property tax exemption, we need to include that in our in all of our documents, and this comes from the town of Greenburgh to us. These are the exempt properties in our school district, and if you keep going down, they also have given us who our 10 top taxpayers are in our district. So you will find this all within this item of property tax exemption and 10 largest taxpayers. You can go back now, Victoria. And then the budget newsletter. The budget newsletter is what was mailed out. It cannot be mailed out until after the budget hearing because it contains the budget notice, and the budget notice gets mailed the day after the budget hearing. So this is the newsletter that you can expect to receive in the mail. The first, I believe the first 3 pages are in English, and the last 3 pages then have been translated into Spanish. So this will be, and again, here's the budget notice that has to be mailed to all of our taxpayers. And again, we give you the superintendent's message, the board president's message, the revenues and expenditures. And then everything but the budget newsletter, which I'm sure the district clerk will have available at the meeting. All of these items here and the next set, the report card are all in a binder that are located at the budget vote for anybody who would like to see it. So part of what we have to make available to the taxpayers is the report cards. So the report cards, what I did was I went on the the portal, and I printed out the Greenburgh report card, the pathways data, graduation, enrollment, English language learner data. Then this data is broken down by school. And for whatever was in the portal, I did it by school. So you could see everything here if you wanted to click on any one of those items. And that's basically what is all in. And this data, the report card, even though it says 23-24, it's included in this budget newsletter, but it's the 21-22 data. That's the most recent data.
There's all of the state tests taken over the summer to get done, so we don't have anything.
Right. Well, and the 22-23 is not done yet, so you wouldn't have the graduation rates, et cetera. So.
Are there any questions? Thank you for this nice, complete presentation of all the things that we have to do to get the budget ready. Okay.
And when is the budget vote?
Budget vote is May 16th, Tuesday, May 16th at the Woodlands Middle High School gym from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
And if anyone has questions, who can they email?
And anybody has questions, you can email me at budget@greenburghcsd.org, or you can just give me a call, either or, 914-761-6000, and my extension is 3108.
Beautiful. All right. Next item on our agenda, the Woodlands track. So on March 14th, the Board of Education accepted a $500,000 Systems Award Management grant secured by New York State Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins to upgrade the Woodlands track. Probably saw that on the minutes of the last meeting. Earlier estimates for the 6-lane track were $500K, and 8-lane was around $1.2 million. I think it was 1.17 something. New BBS estimate for the 6-lane track is now $608,000. There's an attachment if we want to look at it. And then possible additional funding sources. Well, I was thinking that 1.6 million we freed up, we could carve a piece out of it to make up the difference between the 500K and the amount of the new estimate. But I don't know, what do you think is the best way to?
I don't believe we could use any of that money because the American Rescue Plan money was specifically to address needs in our school buildings for ventilation. It was all like pandemic kind of items.
Correct, but what happens is.
Oh, but this is now outside of that. I see what you're saying. Okay. We could, that's up to you guys. I mean, that would just take away what would be applied towards roofs, but yes, it could be.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, so that's a
And we
possibility.
need to, not that there, and Fred, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I've been working with Mike Messina. We did everything that we needed to do for the RJ Bailey Auditorium roof. That is now, I believe, submitted to SCD, but I'm held up now with DASNY. The dormitory is already $500,000. Because they want a budget of what the track's going to cost. So they want to know between the 1.2 million and the 500,000 where we're getting that extra money from. And I didn't include that in the capital interfund transfer because we had it earmarked for 2 other things. So I haven't responded back to him yet because I don't know where we're getting. That's why we asked BBS to give us that modified.
So I think it's out of, I think the money that got bumped by the American Rescue Plan out of phase 1 was from, I think SSS funding in one of the previous years. It might have been 2020, 21, but we can look that up. Is there anything that you need to do? Does the board need to approve anything for us to move forward on that if that's what we want to do?
It has to be told to the taxpayers. The taxpayers approved that money to go towards the phase 1. And now that we're using, so that money really is just going to sit there.
Until we tell the taxpayers. And what do we have to do to tell the taxpayers? Is it a matter of hearing? Is it a matter of a resolution? Is it a matter of a vote?
I'd have to check.
And where is it sitting now? It's in the capital fund transfer
It's in
account?
the capital fund.
Capital fund, that's correct. Capital fund, not capital reserve, so that makes a difference. That makes a big difference.
Right?
Right, but if you remember, the reason we have to, when we give our budget presentation, that we have to say what we're gonna use the 1.34 is because that's part of the budget and that's part of a vote, the taxpayers are saying, yes, Greenburgh, go ahead and spend it on the roof and high-view walls. So in that budget year, they had said, yes, Greenburgh, use it on phase 1 construction. They haven't said, yes, use it on.
Okay, so if it's a hearing, we hold a hearing. If it's a resolution, we pass a resolution. If it's a vote, our next opportunity, we were talking about having another vote to try and have a capital project for the roofs in the early fall.
Correct.
So worst
We could have
possible
two-
case,
two
we have two resolutions. And all right, so
I think that's what we would have to.
your mission is to find out
Yes.
what exactly we have to do to inform the public, since we missed our budget window.
Correct. Okay.
Good. The same sort of thing will probably apply to the tennis courts, depending on whether money comes in from the state for the tennis courts, or if they want to go with 2 more lanes for the track, or if the budget got tighter than we thought and we didn't make it in, we have to find out the results of that.
So if we as a group, or if you guys as a FinTech committee want to go with the $608,000 option, which is the 6 lanes, and then we would worry about the fence and all that other stuff that was taken out, and you wanted to use the 1.6, you could use part of that for tennis.
Correct.
Right.
You know, are we allowed to?
You were allowed to speak.
Right. One of the things, since we are recording this, the big deal, I think, is not to cut the track short for many reasons. And the big reason is that if you're gonna go all the way to 6 lanes, which still doesn't give you the ability to hold big events. It may be really pound foolish to hold back when you're doing all that work. And then you get the 8 lane in where you can bring in county function, which help the district better.
So you could, if you wanted to keep with the 1.2 million, we would need 700,000, 900,000, and I think 900 is enough to do the tennis courts.
Exactly.
So you could accomplish both, keep the 8 lanes,
Right.
the pole vault and the jumping pit and the fence in there, and still most likely
Still have
have the
it,
money
right.
to do the tennis.
Okay. Under advisement. I mean, I have science wing. But everybody has something they want. Okay. Very good. All right. Other.
I have my hand up, David. I have my hand up. Question. If we were to pursue the suggestion just made by Morton, what effect will that have on the roof?
Have on the what?
On the roof, on the roof, Bailey's roof, wasn't
Oh, it
that?
has no effect on Bailey's roof. The money for Bailey's roof is there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Trustee Valley?
Sorry, I'm just being from having a cold. So I know if we had the expansion to 8 lanes, and then I think the architects added in an additional out of bounds area. I don't know if it's a full lane width. That's when we had to do the new perimeter fencing. And I guess the increased expense for those 2 to 3 additional lanes, which really wasn't that much more for the lanes in and of themselves, and the grading and the surfacing. I mean, those were 175,000. It's really all of the other overhead that kind of bumped it up a lot. The fencing portion was 80,000. And I know we were discussing on how else we could deal with that. But again, it's a lot of money, but it's not the bulk of the jump from 5 to 600 to 1.2. The bulk of the jump is overhead, or I'm going to call it overhead. I apologize. Indirect costs. Thank you. That's the appropriate term. Sorry, I don't know where I'm going with this. I guess I'm wondering if the additional 2 to 3 lane, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Morgan, I agree with you, but I'm also trying to be mindful of how we balance everything we need versus what we want. I'm wondering if we only did the 6, if we decided we could only do the 6 lanes now and we were to do 2 plus 1 later, if we didn't actually need new grading, I'm going nowhere with this.
I guess that we'd have to ask Fred, if we did a 6-lane track and then a couple of years later, they decide they wanted to expand it to an 8-lane track, is that possible?
Yes, you could do that later on.
But if you think, Fred, how much more money would it cost to add just the 2 lanes in the future? It wouldn't be where it would come out to the same amount because they have to make the 6 lane settle. Then you have to fuse the 2 lanes with it. So that's got to cost more money.
Yeah, it's definitely going to cost a little bit more if you come in and do the track now, and then you have to remobilize and come back and add the 2 additional lanes. It'll cost a little bit more than the 1.2 million total to do it that way. And a lot of the work for adding the extra lane is obviously, or 2 lanes, is that we have to move fencing, we have to do asphalt underneath it. We can't reuse the existing asphalt because there isn't any. So we're basically creating new track surfaces for that. But it can be done. It could be done later on if you wanted to.
So just
the last question would be, would there be a problem with the seams when you add 2 lanes? Because will it last as long? And we may come down the road maybe 5 or 10 years later saying they've got to redo the track because when you go 6 lanes to 8 lanes, there's a seam. You have to infuse everything. So my question is, will it last as long? Because it's the same thing with a highway. When you have asphalt and you got a dip in there, now you're going to have all that water and things. Will it spread apart? And then we've got a major concern how to put the 2 things back together. So I'm thinking long term, the 8 lane will last a lot longer based on that.
Okay, and if I could just finish one thing, I agree with you, but I'd like to know, at the last meeting or the meeting before, I said that we really need to loop in our athletic director and possibly the track coaches or other coaches who use the facility. Have we done that yet? Because I really feel like we should have their input on this by this point, just to confirm, yes, we can do X kind of meets that might make money with 6 lanes, or we can do X kind of meets with 8 lanes. Have any of those people been looped in yet? Because otherwise, I feel like we're talking without a piece of expertise that we really need.
I haven't had extensive conversations.
And has BB?
I have.
With,
I have,
which
but
is why.
I'm not. I think that we're not the people behind those conversations. I think you guys are, and I'm gonna leave it at that for now.
Okay, Sarah?
Hi, I was just gonna say, yes, I agree with Chris. I think we do need to talk to the athletics people because to me, paying essentially double to add the 2 lanes doesn't necessarily make sense for our district right now, just because it's so much more. But I would like to hear from the athletics director and coaches to kind of explain the real benefits of an 8 lane versus 6, because I don't see it.
Katie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in those conversations with the athletic director and people who have been at these big meets, is the fact that we don't have a bathroom down at the track a factor? Or do places with 8 lanes bring in porta potties? So I'm just, could you make sure that's part of the conversation? Or unless somebody knows the answer.
I've been to different facilities where they have a track and there's typically an outdoor bathroom or something fairly close by, but a lot of places you have to walk for a quarter of a mile at some of the events.
Yeah.
You know, typically they have like a gym bathrooms outside of the gym or off of the side of the building, but still it's a substantial walk at some of the different facilities I've seen.
I think the big meet I was at Somers, I want to say they had a row of outdoor porta potties, but it was a huge meet, so they might have had multiple bathroom options. But agreed, that's something we need to talk to the coaches about.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
David, I'm coming in the very, very end of this conversation, but why wasn't athletics looked into the conversation? I mean, I'm asking you, I know you're not in it, but you're chairing the meeting. I don't know who I should ask.
I don't think that anybody's coming back with an objection saying they should not be included. So I don't think there's a reason for people not doing it. I think it just hasn't been done and needs to be done.
Okay. I'm just drawing attention to it because it's one of many things where everyone needs to be considered in discussion in the conversation.
Right, and I have informally spoken with one of the track coaches and she laid out everything, you know, this is where the shot put should be and the whole 9 yards. You were there too, right? And I know about that, but I don't think we've gotten them in touch with the administrators or with the architects yet. So yes, it needs to be happened.
So like
I'm
just
agreeing with
moving
you.
forward, everyone involved definitely needs to like be pulled into just a regular conversation, like.
Katie,
Yeah, just to clarify, the estimate for the 6-lane track, does that include doing a shot put and those other field event things that only if you go to
Go
the
ahead.
I have it in front of me.
Yeah, so do we.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No, no, Mr.
No,
Russell.
Originally, the estimate that we had provided for the 6-lane did include it. We were asked to see if we could bring that estimate down as close to 500 as we could. So we took out the fencing and we took out the field events. So they are not being, they're not receiving the rubberized surface. They'll stay where they are and they'll stay functional the way they are. The only thing that will receive the rubberized surface right now is the actual running track itself.
Okay, so to answer Katie's question, no is the answer?
Well,
Well, the high jump and the long jump are included.
Okay,
They are not, no.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are.
they
They're,
are.
they're in the 600
Version.
Yeah, the high jump and the long jump are in there.
They're in the 6-lane track?
Yes.
Mm,
Yeah,
Okay.
we got it right here from what Mike sent us.
that from what Mike Messina had sent you?
Correct.
Okay, so I guess we are recoding those. So we're not relocating those. We're leaving them in their existing location and we're putting the rubberized surface on.
did we have a high jump before?
so what is included in there exactly? The high jump and what else?
The track surface for 6 lanes, site demo, prep, restoration, new high jump and long jump, and then indirect costs.
Does that answer your question, Katie?
It doesn't include shot puts, but there's some talk, we've been talking offline with the coaches on how that could be done in the grass area beyond the perimeter. But again, because that conversation hasn't happened officially, and we would need those 4 events to be able to host any minimal meets, but I'm not the expert.
Yeah,
We need
but
to have a
you're doing
discussion.
the work that everyone should, I mean, everyone should be, and it's not just this issue, it's any of these issues, it's any of the other issues that come up in other meetings. Like, if a board member thinks to speak to athletic people about it, the professionals should as well. But does that answer your question, Katie, or did you have another question, Maddie?
Yeah, well, it answers, so some of the field events will be, meaning high jump and long jump. And so it just, yeah, Chris, you said something about, so are those usable in regular meets? If a school has those 2 field events, does that happen or you have to have all 4? I'm not sure because my child's in modified, so.
My brain is mushy because I've had a cold for the past few days, so I don't want to misconstrue or misinterpret what I was told. I believe they need at least those 4 events to run a sort of group.
You can pull up, high jump.
Can I interject?
go ahead.
I think we need to postpone this conversation and invite the director and the coach to a meeting, because right now we're speculating as to what are the needs are, and and we're going around in circles speculating, and we don't have the professionals who could provide the answer in the room. So we could spend more time going around and around, and we still will not come up with, which I believe, a good answer, because the professionals are not in the room.
Point taken.
If I can just say, Mr. Simon, if the experts here aren't able to bring their professionals to the FinFAC meeting, if they could at least meet with them beforehand, and report back to FinTech, and so wonder if that's agreed. Just so there's both options open.
Well, whatever, but we need
During
their
the break
input.
Day, you talk to the track coaches and the athletic director, and if someone wants to come to, if volunteers to come to the FinTech meeting, so much the better. Our next meeting is in June. Okay. Then moving on. Energy performance contract. For Vidal Italiana, we are on schedule for a June contract submission to the Board of Education for approval and then submission of the energy performance contract to NYSED. Yes.
I'm sorry, before you move on to this, can we talk about the tennis courts? That was an issue at one point, and I know there was a question.
Oh, what would you like to say about the tennis?
Just
courts?
that we did. When did we talk? Did I miss it earlier tonight?
Go ahead.
We mentioned it briefly.
Okay.
There,
I'm sorry.
Gabriella Barahona didn't ask a question, but
Did she-
basically, there were a couple of vendors
Yes,
that she submitted to us, I think back in March.
yes,
The thing is that when you have a bid process, you don't want to have your estimates come out willy-nilly. You have to have a bid process and then all the estimates come out at once, so nobody
Okay.
sees anybody else's estimate.
okay,
So we're not gonna do a little informal thing where we gather it up and then we say, okay, it's time to go to bid now. So now we have a couple of candidates for going to bid.
so we're gonna go to bid for the tennis courts?
Not yet.
We have to have money. So now we're waiting,
we
we're waiting to
discussed
see what
about-
happens with the New York State budget passage, whether we got included a $300,000 to $500,000 item. Right? That's what Mary Jane Shimsky was asking for us to provide so that we could include it. The tennis courts were on the list.
Mhm.
And they're passed, they're going through the process of passing a budget. It's a long, slow, cumbersome process with a bunch of paperwork. And then at some point, everybody emerges from the budget process and then they'll be able to tell us, okay, this is what we got. And we haven't gotten the word yet. So we're waiting on funding sources. There's that funding source, and then there's breaking down the 1.6 million that we recovered when we took the American Rescue Plan funding and plugged it into phase one. That freed up some money,
Okay.
$1.6 million. We can cut that up.
Okay,
So
And
we have to
that put it
determine,
towards the roofs.
right, we have to determine what our funding source is, and then
Okay.
we get to the point at which we could go to bid.
all right, so I'm gonna check back in.
We'll probably
When-
know the next FinTech meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So then.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
The energy performance
First
contract.
minute.
Yeah, okay, so for Vidal Italiana, we're on schedule for a June contract submission to the Board of Education for approval. I know we've seen it tabled in a couple of board meetings
Mhm.
because the underlying documentation is not completely done yet,
Right.
but it's coming. Okay, so about another month, we think. The board did pass a resolution at our May 2nd meeting, allowing RWE to make a $59,000 down payment on the Con Edison interconnection cost to support the Woodland solar panel and BESS installation, right? So all that power gets onto the grid. It's $239,000 to do all the connection work. You have to put a deposit at the front end. If you do that, then that means I guess they've applied for their rebate, and what they really want is their rebate check. Right.
It locks in our rebate.
Right, and if we don't do this, we lose it.
And if we get the rebate,
and
we can have more things in the scope, right?
Yeah, or if we don't get the rebate in time, then I guess they have a pile of money and it gets renewed every year. So if you wait too long, you lose your place in line, and then they have to wait till next year to get their money, okay? So they don't want to do that. So we're accommodating that, and they're fronting the money. And if our contract doesn't go through, then we had the agreement says, here's what happens, and everybody gets their money back in case the energy performance contract doesn't make it. So we're covered either way. Okay, so we took care of that. Then as of the 420 FinFact meeting, the scope of the contract had been reduced based upon a 5% interest rate projection for our financing. Which
Please
was,
have an update on that, David.
go ahead.
So Lisa had been in contact with bond counsel.
Hmm.
And the interest rate was recommended to be lowered down to 4.5%.
Okay,
And at a 4.5% interest rate, RWE was able to fit those rooftop units back into the project. So as of right now, those rooftop units are now part of the energy performance contract again.
hooray. Back in. Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. I didn't know if that would have been taken care of by now, but it's good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes,
Because that pretty much brings you to the end of the bullet points on there, but can we ask about the question that trustee Long brought up the other day? About the high view solar panels, how they were removed from the scope and whether, right, if you could just confirm that's because they were found that it wasn't sunny enough on the portions of the roof that had been repaired at high view?
Fred?
The solar panels at Highview.
Yep.
So the reason that those got taken out was that once they had a chance to survey the portion of roof that we actually redid the roofing on, they felt that that portion of roof was too shaded. And as a result, it was going to produce a lot less energy than they had originally hoped for, which would have affected the payback. And therefore, that's why it was taken out. It didn't have anything to do with the monies available. It just had to do with the location of it. So they would have had to have done some fairly substantial tree trimming in order to be able to make that roof sunny. And I know that tree trimming was something that the committee was not very happy with, and we'd originally discussed that regarding the solar and or battery energy storage location. So they decided that it was best for them to pull that photovoltaic out on Highview roof for now.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay. And last but not least, we have the Edgemont Incorporation issue.
Before you start that issue, another question came about the tennis courts. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Circle back. So, we are waiting for funding source. But how much funding are we actually looking for? We have a range based off of who,
BBS looking
Right.
and seeing that we have
So
to tear everything down and start again.
right? So the other two companies though, that were given by a committee member, we wouldn't ask them, because if their estimate is lower, maybe we can move with that.
You come up with an estimate and then you go to bid, and the actual cost from the bid may be lower than the initial estimate that you made.
But why that estimate? Why not an estimate that may be even lower? Why does it matter? Which
Lower
Well,
than-
they, whoever the lowest bidder is, that those two companies, they would be invited to submit their bid.
Right, but if the estimate is actually lower from one of those other two companies, we might be able to use a different funding source. Why are we waiting for a funding source based off of a possibly high or too high estimate?
I think you want to make sure that you have the maximum amount of money that you think, or the architects think that we would possibly have to spend, so that, because when you go out to bid, the bidder is anticipating you're going to give me the job.
Right, but when we, okay, I mean, that just seems like it's wasting a lot of our money, because if we.
We don't actually spend the money if we don't have to.
If we have a very high estimate, or they can just watch these meetings, we have a very high estimate, if they're coming in at much lower than that, they're gonna try to be somewhere around that estimate that is public from our BBS.
So are you saying that we shouldn't? I don't know, I'm trying to understand how you're trying to change the process so that we
Not
don't
at all,
tell
if they didn't know, I'm wondering why we wouldn't get more than one estimate.
We do.
What other estimate do we have? We have one estimate. Did we have more than one estimate from BBS? Maybe I missed it. I don't know.
So BBS comes up with what they think it will probably cost. Multiple people come in and bid on the actual contract. Because they're competing with each other, there is competitive pressure for them to bid lower, while they think they still have to make money off of it, right? And so they come in, we take the lowest bid, and then they complete the construction, and then we may have some leftover money, which then gets plowed into another project. That's the normal process.
We already said it's $3,000 to $500,000, correct?
That's what I thought, yeah.
Okay. Yes, Kate.
Yeah, I just was trying to clarify. I'm thinking, and this is for you, Tracy,
Mhm.
but I could be wrong. BBS is the architect that goes out there and does the scope and looks at everything. Did these other places that I'm not even clear what you're talking about, but somebody else had other estimates? Did they go out and look at and do everything that BBS
Go ahead,
did?
Dr. Mathis. Tell us about the process of going through a bid.
Yeah,
No, she wasn't asking about the bid process. She was asking about the other two places that I brought up. And the other two places, brought up by a fellow Finance and Facilities Committee member who found two places, I guess she has connections in the tennis world, that have built tennis courts in other school districts in New York, locally and in Rockland, I believe. And so their costs for, I guess, whatever, and they had been in the conversation. I feel like we spoke to tennis people about this and we're on
The
the.
United Tennis Association
Yeah,
and all that.
so,
Yeah.
so a lot of that happened earlier this year or the end of last year.
Last year, yeah.
And so I was asking about those other companies having the opportunity to also give some sort of an estimate. Does that make better sense, Katie?
Gabriella.
Not those meetings, I mean, not the meetings with them, but Gabriella explained it. She's got her hand raised now. Maybe she can clarify.
Go ahead.
Yes. What was behind this? It was just a very casual conversation with the tennis center where my kids currently take lessons. And they're familiar. They mentioned these two companies that I sent to you, David, and said they have the experience of building for other districts. I think one was Peak Skill that was mentioned. And that's what was behind it. I understand there's a process. It just sounds, I guess, because I'm not familiar with it, just confusing the funding versus the bidding piece. I think now the way it was explained, I think I get it. And it's not as simple as just reaching out to vendors and just getting estimates, because I understand the bidding, in the construction world, you send your architect plans out and wait for, kind of create a little competitive. I understand all that. So I think that was the piece that I was missing. What was confusing for me is asking for funding without knowing like I know there's an estimate on the project, but I thought I didn't realize it wasn't possible to reach out to these two separate companies to just get a comparable estimate.
So the estimates,
You want them to possibly build the thing, right? So you want them to be in the bid process. So they're going to be funneled into the bid process and they'll get to compete and come up with bids for what they think the thing is worth.
If they are in the estimate process, they cannot be in the bidding process?
No, they could.
No, well, they can look at anything they want, anytime they want, but we're going to scope things out. We're going to apply to New York State Education Department, make sure that everything is like it's supposed to be. They'll figure out what kind of aid we get, if anything, and then say, okay, we're ready to go to bid now. And then you bring these two people in and other people, and you advertise, so it's a fair and open bidding process. But this helps. We've added these people now to our list of people we're going to ask for them for bids, and then they'll do that.
so, David, the way the process works is that we're asked to provide a price for, say, tennis courts. We come up, we take a quick look at the tennis courts. We haven't designed anything yet. We don't know what's under the tennis courts. We don't know what the base looks like, how much rock is under there, how much we're going to have to excavate, what the drainage is like in the area. So we provide an estimate. It's only an architectural engineering estimate at this point, based upon other tennis courts that we have done throughout New York State. And we've done dozens of them. So we have a good baseline to judge against. But we put money in there for contingencies. So you have rock and rock outcroppings throughout your campus up there. So we have to make sure that we have money in there, that if all of a sudden we start to excavate for the new tennis courts and we hit some rock, we have to make sure that we have money in there to take care of that. Drainage, same thing. We have to make sure that we have money in there to provide proper drainage. The tennis courts that we do are complete new from the ground up. So it's a new base, it's new asphalt, it's new coatings, it's new net posts, it's all new fencing, it's new drainage, everything is pitched properly. So that's basically what goes into the estimate that gets provided to the district, and you use that as a baseline. Now, once we design it, we send it to the state, as was mentioned, it then gets publicly bid. So let's say we estimated $1 million and it comes in at $900,000. That's great. That's savings that goes back to the school district. But we have to make sure we carry enough money for any circumstance that we're going to run into during the design phase and then during the construction phase. So that's where the engineering estimate is, and that's how the process would work. You can bring in other contractors. The problem is they don't have a scope of work to bid on. So they don't know what kind of drainage you need. They don't know how deep the existing base is, how far they have to dig down and excavate and pull matter out. You could have clay there. You could have, bad soils there, things like that. So they might have to go down a little bit further. So again, they can't really give you an actual price right now until the design is completed. And then it will go out to public bid, and those companies can then bid on that work and hopefully be the low bidder.
Gabriella?
Sorry, I still had my hand raised before, but thank you for explaining that piece. I think that's the part that I was misunderstanding.
Walter? You're
You're on
muted.
mute.
Muted.
There we go. Try again.
Okay, going back to the base question that was raised by Gabriella. The two companies that she mentioned, are they eligible to bid?
If they meet all the insurance requirements and the bonding requirements and the experience requirements, then yes, they would be eligible to bid.
Okay, but they will be on the same footing as any other company to put in the bid. The requirements for that, those two companies will be the same as any other bidder?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so, that answers the question. Thank you.
What's the experience requirement?
Well, just how you would vet a contractor, like have you actually built a tennis court before? Have you just thought about doing that tennis court? It's a contractor that's been a proven contractor. That's part of the vetting process for how many jobs have you done? What kind of work have you done? Can we see your work? It's tough when you're first starting out, obviously.
We decide that or BBSC?
It's pretty much standard in our front end and typical throughout the industry. We typically ask for 5 similar size and scope projects completed in the past, and that they've been in business for a period of 5 years or more. So those are the typical biggest requirements on experience. And as long as these contractors are proven and they meet those requirements, then they can absolutely bid on the project. We would encourage them to bid on the project.
And if they've done other school districts before, they're probably good.
What if they did 2 or 3 and they're coming in at a reasonable price and they would do a good job for us? They get bumped out, and then there's a smaller section of companies that can be used only because there's such a large threshold of the amount that they built and the years and all of this criteria.
So you're talking about an RFP process or a straight bid?
I don't know.
So you can come up with a point system and say, look, I think experience is worth this much. But I think that the cost is worth this much, and I can weight that and say, I'd rather take the lower cost than the greater experience. And you can play with the process a little bit and make that work.
I don't want to waste too much time, honestly, on this. I just know that we have so many things that don't get done over the years, and I'm wondering what delays them so much. And now I'm hearing these type of hurdles continuously be put in the way, and I'm wondering if that's part of why things don't happen. So I don't want to waste too much time on it, but it's dawning on me that it seems like there's so
There's a lot of
many.
bureaucracy. Yes, there is. It is true.
Yeah, well, how do we cut some of that and do good work for our students to actually get things done? That's what I'm wondering. But okay.
Okay. I mean, there's certain things that you can do. What's the process by which NYSED takes a long time to come back to you once you submit it?
Fast track it.
And you can fast track it by hiring your own person.
Not anymore.
I don't think you can.
They got rid of it?
Right, Fred, you can't fast track anymore?
No, they actually discontinued the third-party review process temporarily because they felt that their review process was down to 10 to 12 weeks, which they felt was reasonable. So therefore, they have temporarily put it on hold. Unfortunately, we do get architectural engineering review in 10 to 12 weeks, but they're short on project managers up there. So that usually takes another 8 or 10 weeks. So they don't really advertise that on their website. Somewhat false advertising in my opinion, but so it's going to take 3 months to get technical sign off, and then another 2 or 3 months in order to get project manager sign off. So it's fairly substantial backlog right now.
So then what needs to happen is that money needs to be allocated. I assume is it a funding thing at Albany? Do there need to be more people hired? Are there not enough graduates? Is there a shortage of labor? What's going on? Do we know?
They've actually just hired 2 brand new project managers that are in training, but they're not from that area, so they really don't have any experience doing that job. So it's a very involved process. It takes a long time to train somebody to do that. So they're working, but not very effectively.
Yeah, okay, so they'll gain traction over time. So you're looking for something to lobby for, right? You want them to somehow reform the process and make it better. And
sometimes newer innovative companies can do better jobs. Sometimes they have great ideas for drainage or any other issue that we have. We're a very unique district. We don't have a lot of money. We have all these needs, so that's all. I just wonder how we keep getting caught up in bureaucracy. But I guess that's where we are. We can move on. I mean, it's not gonna change.
right, this committee is not going to eliminate bureaucracy.
Not at all.
You have, but as a board president, you can kick things up a notch at higher levels, and you have to fix the process
Yeah.
at another level. Okay. Okay, fair enough. Speaking of other levels, the Edgemont Incorporation issue. Edgemont Incorporation may significantly increase property taxes in unincorporated Greenburgh, including our school district. This will negatively impact taxpayers and make school budget and bond passage more difficult. On February 28th, the board passed a resolution requesting the state controller financial impact statement prior to an incorporation vote, that be publicized on what the actual financial consequences are, both to the potential village itself and to the surrounding community, and that the vote include the entire town, including impacted school districts. So we may not be inside of Edgemont, but we're inside of a larger community with the same tax base. So if you pull most of the Edgemont tax base out, it affects the town of Greenburgh taxes, and our taxpayers are paying those taxes as well. So there'll be a combination probably of people being laid off at the town level, but taxes also being raised. The more the property taxes people are paying for things other than school, the less money they have in their pocket to help with the schools, the less likely they are to vote for the school budget, the less likely they are to vote for a bond. We need to do things like replace our roofs. Okay. So we are concerned, and the board passed a resolution to that effect. The superintendent has also met with Assemblywoman Mary Jane Shimsky and is scheduled to meet with Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins on this issue. The board president, Tracy Mayers, and Superintendent Iverson spoke at the Saving Greenburgh meeting on April 27th, last week. Senator Cousins and Assemblywoman Shimsky both attended and spoke. Senator Cousins has results of a Pace University Village Incorporation study, and she pledged to address the issue. They've been ensconced, I think, in the budget, the New York State budget process, and now this is their first chance to kind of come up for air. And so we were concerned about the Pace study taking forever, but they have results. Okay, so per Senator Cousins, legislative reform must apply to across the board to all of New York State, not just our town or county. There was an original request. Let's just make the legislation reform just apply home rule to us and not anybody else throughout the state. She said no, the law has to be the law across the state. Also, and she said that in her statement to the group. I talked to her a little bit afterwards. Also, per Senator Cousins, legislative reform should not invalidate the process by which a group can incorporate to maintain their culture and religious practices. An example is probably New Square in Rockland County. She said there was a place in Rockland County in which this was an issue in the past and wanted not to tread on that. Per Senator Cousins' aide, the Pace University study is not yet public, but will become public soon. So we made two requests. One is that there be an independent source with a financial report. And I got kind of good vibes on that. And there were things in the speech that said that one's good. The other part that they did not state anything explicitly on was, okay, who's voting on this village incorporation? If they reform the legislation, does that mean it's still just the people inside the potential village who vote, or is it the entire town of Greenburgh? And I'm not sure that that's going to be the solution that they will come up with. I'm suspecting that there are other solutions, but I don't know. But the key is in that Pace University study. So at the point that they publicize that Pace University study, we will have an idea of what's going on and what kind of reform process they're looking at. So that's where I'm at. I'm not sure how I want to go to Dr. Allen.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Would you like to weigh in on this and what steps we should take next and whether you want to add anything to what I've said?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, President Mayers and Superintendent Iverson, for having attended the meeting last week and for speaking. The involvement of the Board of Education carries a lot of weight with the legislators and carries a lot of weight around town. So you are an important ally in this fight, and we are fighting together to try and stop this incorporation effort. I do not believe that the Pace University study carries much weight. From what the senator said to us last week, it sounds very much like it repeated the information that was already given in a study done by the Rockefeller Institute several years ago, which talked about the various levels of oversight of the incorporation process. Some states have very little oversight. Some states have a tremendous amount of oversight. They are still talking about doing a larger study, which would then form the framework for changing legislation. Money for that study would have to go into the budget. We just spent a lot of time talking about what's required to get government action because of all the bureaucracy that's necessary. So that would probably be at least a year or two process. And in the meantime, we are facing the possibility of Edgemont filing a petition. So realistically speaking, what we desperately need at this point is to have a moratorium on village incorporation so that no area in the entire state would be able to file a petition for incorporation until the study and the amended laws can be put into place. We must continue to impress upon our legislators that inaction on their part to stop the process is not acceptable to us as the voting public. If they do not do something immediately before this legislative session is over, in terms of either giving us the home rule legislation, which can be done, it does not have to be done on a statewide level. As we know from the recent action that was taken as far as the condo and condominium taxes. So either they give us the home rule to give us all the right to vote, or they impose a moratorium. So anyone who's interested in writing or calling or signing a petition or sending a letter or sending an email, we need your voices to speak up to the legislators to let them know that this is of utmost importance to us and they must take action. Otherwise, they're being derelict in their duty to their constituents. If the superintendent is having a meeting with the senator in the near future, I'm sure that she will impress upon the senator the need for immediate relief. I encourage everyone who's on the call or who may be watching to please speak out to your legislators, because lobbying in large numbers is what we must do at this point.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Simon.
Am I off mute? Yeah.
Off mute.
First of all, I want to say that Dr. Allen is doing a Herculean job in trying to get something passed in the legislature. Myself and a small group of people have been working on this issue for about the last 6 years. Legislation was introduced several times by Abernathy and in the state legislature, and every time it came to the Senate, it died. Another study is not the issue because it will take time and it does not have the weight of the controller's office. So there's many ways of getting ahead of this. I mean, which Dr. Allen just alluded to. One, another option is to have put the burden on Edgemont. They came up with a budget that says it will not hurt the town. Let them propose that to the controller. Let the controller look at a quote proposed budget for the next 5 years and look at the economic impact it will have on unincorporated Greenburgh, as well as Edgemont. The cost will go up for Edgemont also. But they have the financial ability to absorb what increase will come to them. We don't. And so the key is, which I believe, is to get the controller to look at the finances involved in incorporation. That's something that was proposed to Andrew Stewart 2 years ago by myself and Hugh Swartz, who's the current chair of the planning board. And it fell to nothing happened from that. And to me, politically, it's an easy out for the senator, because now she does not have to take sides. She said, I want to get objective analysis of the financial impact. And so she doesn't have to take sides, and that's the way we presented it to her. You don't have to take sides, just get objective analysis. Now, to wait on the Pace University, we don't know when that's going to come about. And that does not have the weight and influence of something from the controller. It's just another study. And it's another study that will take a year or whatever. And for all the reasons that was outlined, that does not help the situation with incorporation. So I would agree, we need to do everything we can to stop any movements on incorporation and get the controller to look at the numbers, because a lot of work was done in terms of the economics of incorporation. Like I said, Hugh Swartz and his wife, who's an attorney, they did a lot. They have a lot of data that show it will be a tremendous negative impact on unincorporated Greenburgh. So in the meeting, you need to impress upon a superintendent and I don't know, if the president be at the meeting, Tracy, is that a study by Pace University is something we should not be pursuing. We should be holding up any decision on incorporation, and at minimum have the controller take a look at the economic impact on Greenburgh.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
How soon, Dr. Allen and Mr. Simon, how soon do you guys think, worst case scenario, that Edgemont would move?
We don't know. I mean, they had a difficulty with the boundaries because, and that was the basis for it being thrown out before. And Hugh Swartz and his wife did all the legal work, and they gave all the legal arguments to the town. And that's why the town, in effect, won the previous two lawsuits because of all the research they did. Now, one of the things they're doing is trying to get the boundaries correct. I believe they hired a surveyor because they have the money to do that, to see if they can adjust the boundaries. The one thing they want to do is to incorporate the fire district into the village because there's a lot of opportunities for economies in the fire district. And by having the village, they could take some economies there. They could remove $1 million for the Taylor Young facility. They could, they came up with numbers how they could buy back a service of police and fire department at a reduced cost to us, not to pay the full cost, but, and that's how they came up with their whole economic justification. And so they have been, I don't know how soon they will get everything in place to do that. In addition to that, Edgemont had a $50,000 school bond, and they didn't do the necessary finances of that bond. The interest rates have shot up, and now they have to do that $50,000. Now is substantially more than, not 50,000, 50 million.
50 million.
They have to do the work they need to do will be substantially more than 50 million. And now for them to incorporate and have additional costs, because their costs will go up as well as ours. That has been another kink in their armor in terms of incorporation. So it's a combination of getting those boundaries straight, so incorporate the fire department, and figuring out how they are going to set another bond for the school, which will be 50 million plus. So I think those are the two things that's holding up Edgemont for going out again and gathering signatures for a referendum. So that's the best I could tell you. So I really don't know when that will happen.
Okay, thank you.
They still have been collecting signatures. And we had actually thought that they would be filing their petition a couple of months ago, but thankfully that has not happened. But they are poised to file very soon.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other comments or questions? All right, so that concludes anything I have on the agenda. Is anyone want to raise any other concern? So I hear a motion to adjourn.
Not concerned, but I think we talked about sometime in the future having another a bond for the school. And I think what we should be doing is setting the foundations for that. So in order for people to support a bond, they want to know that the previous money that we got, we spent wisely. I would suggest starting September, you talk about, all these projects that we're doing and the success of those projects and keeping the public informed how we're spending the money, that we are doing a due diligence and spending their money properly. And you show them all the results of this, and then you also say that, we come a long way, but we still have these projects out there that will cost approximately so, but you don't talk about a bond. You just talk about what you're doing and how you're taking care of the money. You're making good progress, but there are still projects that must be done. You see, so you build up to the bond. You just don't say, I need money for the bond. You slowly build it up, starting from September. If indeed you're thinking about doing it next year, you start in September, you slowly build it up, you market it. So by the time you ask for a bond, the public say, oh, that's reasonable.
So, Mr. Simon, this has been brought up, we really should have went to bond in May. I'm sorry it was delayed. Really not happy about that, but we've been talking about it in this facilities committee for a while, and I'm afraid after the heels of the Edgemont conversation of waiting till next May, to be honest with you. And I was hoping and thinking that we were going to move much sooner than that.
Well, we have the secret now for the roofs, and we could start this discussion now and plan. I mean, we just mentioned we could be doing this bond offer in the fall. I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
No, that's I'm looking at you guys, you
But
three
the
as a
barrier-
board members that
We had to have it on the May vote was we had to have the secret done by March 28th.
But we talked about, okay.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
But we are
Done now.
here
So
now.
that piece of
So we can
bureaucracy.
wait. So this building up in discussion, Mr. Simon, as far as I'm concerned, we should be doing that
Right
now.
now, yeah.
Exactly. And don't talk about a bond.
Maybe
Talk
we
about talk
16.
about how you are good stewards of the money you receive. Talk about the good results you're getting, and talk about, we came this far, but we still have a journey to go. Don't even talk about the bond. Don't mention the bond. Just get in the public's mind that you are moving forward in a positive way. Then in the spring, then you talk about the bond. But don't start talking about the bond before you have done the appropriate build up and marketing.
Right.
I see.
I think Jessica-
The participants, I can take.
Actually, I'm going to disagree with that. If we're going for something in the fall, which I do think we should push for, this summer is a great opportunity to get people into the buildings, to do tours of the spaces, to see what's going on. The reality is that you can't argue with the situation in the roofs in the building. So taking the opportunities that community members can drop in at times that might be more convenient, maybe do something on the week in the morning, an evening, a weekend. So prior to when you guys do your walkthroughs, but to make those spaces available for people in preparation. Fully agree. There have been some very smart moves done with the budget, ways to be conservative, ways to roll the money over so you're getting these larger funds that can go through to a big project, the energy performance contract. And once it goes through in June with the state, really, really highlighting the success with that. But this is all going to a bond because this is the only way we get roofs done. You don't get roofs done in a lump sum yearly budget. It's a big project. This is what districts do. And so it's mostly, I think, also to normalize for the public that this is how work gets done in schools. It's not done on a yearly basis. And I think people might not be familiar or comfortable with the idea that this is how you pay for stuff to get done in New York. So I think if there's a way to, I know everyone needs summer vacation, I'd need desperately summer vacation, but I think if there are ways to calendar some time to get into the schools, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay. During summer. Sarah.
Yeah, I agree with Jessica that I don't want to wait anymore. We, put up a bond 4 years ago and we haven't done anything since then. So I'm continually frustrated by all of the missed opportunities. And I don't want to just keep waiting for the perfect time when we've done all this stuff and because there is no perfect time and we should take advantage of it as soon as possible.
Okay. So to weigh in for myself, I kind of think that we should, I would have loved to have had a bond in May. And so since we can't, the next fall is the soonest we can get to it. I would like to show progress on the things I can easily point at the Highview roof. We can point at the mansion. I hope that we'll very soon be able to point to a security vestibule, but we'll see how that's progressing. Anything else you can think of we can get done over the summer?
I'm planning on renovating a couple of the bathrooms down here. Now that we have just the gym, we went from having a gym that had never been touched originally. You walk in now and it's collegiate. But then you go out to the bathrooms and you're like, oh, what's going on?
But this is your
Okay.
spotlight time, so
Yep.
now you get
So this way,
to highlight.
we want to make sure that
Yeah.
the gym it looks as good as anybody else's, but then you go out of the gym and okay, here we've got some nice facilities to wash your hands and go to the bathroom, and it's not embarrassing for a first class. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take whatever things are in progress and in process during the summer, and we'll add it all up and we'll show you what we're doing with your dollars, and then we'll say, and now we need to do something to fix our roofs.
Mr. Simon,
Yes.
I know that you have contact and are around folks that traditionally don't support bonds and budgets and sometimes, anything around the school district in general. This committee, is obviously favorable in support of the school district and believes and feels that you can't really argue with a bond to repair all of the roofs, that was a good sell. Are you thinking that that still may be a difficult hurdle for folks if the number doesn't go too high?
No, it goes back to what I said. If people feel that you are doing a good job in managing their money, you build up credibility and they'll be willing to give you more. So that's why I'm saying, don't mention the word bond. Like I said, you build up, you show that you are managing the money, you're doing your due diligence and everything, and then you build up to that. And then when you come up with the bond, you will get greater support.
Okay.
So the best way to do that is not for me or anyone else to go around and say, support the bond. The best way to do that is to demonstrate that we're doing a good job in handling the money, we're accomplishing something, but the job is not finished. That's the best way of doing it.
Thank
And
you.
that's how you get support, not by just telling people you need to support. We believe in the school system. We are dedicated, but we're like in a tunnel. We're talking to each other. That doesn't cut it. We have to be able to sell it to everyone else. And like I said, I outlined which I feel is the best way of selling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol.
What is the minimum amount of time that it takes from when you say a resolution that we want to have a bond, it has to be published, it has to have public hearings, and then it has to have a vote. What is the smallest amount of time that it takes to do something like that?
So 45 days is the amount of time that it needs to be publicly advertised as a minimum prior to the vote. So I think you might be able to reach a compromise, getting it done sooner, but not too soon, if you were to think about maybe an early December bond referendum.
Oh, before,
I was thinking
no, before
October.
then.
But, excuse me, let me finish, please. If it only takes 45 days, why can't we get it done in August?
Oh, I
This is the
thought we
beginning
didn't
of
want to
May.
do July or August because people were on vacation, families weren't here.
You know,
So what? If they're not
Cycle-
here, they don't vote. They can vote absentee if they're not
We,
here.
we need
Yeah,
families.
Dr. Allen, but really, two people are going back to school. There's like a hype and a happiness about returning to school in September.
Mhm.
So somewhere around there, I mean, I could hear an argument for August. I could also hear an argument for early October. But
We
I
have
think-
leaky roofs. We want to stop the water from getting into our building. Why are we delaying? Because someone wants to be on vacation. To me, that doesn't make sense. We should be moving forward with all due haste.
That's fine, but how do you get people to, it's not a question of moving forward with haste, it's to get it passed. That's the goal, get it passed.
All
That's the
right,
goal.
so the easiest way to get it passed is to have as few people voting on it as possible and have a majority of those people to
Wow.
vote yes.
I-
Okay?
Remember,
It went
you
before
cannot
got
say anything
defeated
you want.
because so many
Okay.
people came out to vote against it. We should not be
Yeah, yeah.
delaying. We need to move
Oh,
forward.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
Hi, yeah, no, I wanted to say, I thought when it came out that we couldn't do the May vote, because of the secra not having enough time, I thought we as a committee had already said like, yeah, we would do it in the fall. So I'm surprised to hear anything past that. I get why August might not be ideal, because we need people who, the district can only say go out and vote, but we need people who will be out there saying go vote yes. And if they're on vacation, that's going to be harder. But that said, you know, the only bonds that have passed, and it was years and years ago, are roof bonds in this district. So I think it, you know, I hope that's why people say, I think that's why some people think you can't argue with that, and there's been success in the past. But anyway, I agree. I like what Mr. Simon's saying about the way to market it, but we already have mentioned the bond publicly and everything. So I think a combo of in the summer newsletter or whatever's coming out, I guess it's the first thing in the fall, but really highlighting what's been done and all of that stuff, and always having an eye toward, we're trying to build trust and confidence in us.
Even if we got this, we're still waiting for SHPO.
What?
Okay.
Oh, now how
And then
is that
Historic
gonna-
Preservation Society.
Don't-
I know, how much?
We're still, we check constantly with environmental science because they have a lady who just deals with them. So we've got the secret. We're just waiting to hear from SHPO that it's not a historic roof.
So why can't we, and maybe it's a legal question, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but why can't we go for a bond while we're waiting for SHPO as well?
Because if SHPO, correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, if SHPO declares that it's a historic site, then that the requirements to change that or replace that could be more costly.
But why can't we have that as a condition of the bond where the community is willing to support and approve and vote yes for a bond pending
I don't know, can we do that?
something,
Fred?
and then if it's too much, then we
The
go
problem
back to the drawing board.
is, so if you declare all the roofs historical and then it costs twice as much to repair them, and you're trying to pass a bond that's twice as big as it needs to be, it's not worthwhile. Okay, that's
So we
my,
don't know how long we have to wait.
Yeah.
Okay,
Megan.
great.
Do you have secra approval now, Lisa?
Yes.
no, Megan,
So technically, you can go out to a vote prior to having SHPO as long as you have secra in place. So that is an option for you. The prevailing wisdom is that you don't vote during the summer because we'll challenge you and say you tried to do this when we weren't paying attention, and you will lose the majority of your yes vote because the parents are not really paying attention in the summer. They're not coming to school board meetings. They're not really paying that much attention. So you typically want to do it in the fall, but I think if we're going to get work done starting after the heating season, like at Bailey, and that work is going to continue over the summer, and then hopefully by beginning of September, that work will be completed. So if you're able to show the public and gain their trust, as Mr. Simons mentioned, and say, okay, look at all this work that we've gotten done. We're doing well with your money. Then you start maybe discussing a bond. After that, you would have to approve it by mid-October in order to vote in early December. So that's a very typical date that we see in school districts, so that you can get work done over the summer. You can show the voters what you're getting accomplished, but yet you're not trying to do something over the summer where they're going to accuse you of trying to go behind their backs.
So why can't we approve it way before then? To go.
Sorry, say that again?
Why can't we approve June or July meeting for October vote to the public? Why do you keep pushing back to December?
But I would think typically you would want to have discussions in public about potentially putting a project forward so that you can get public opinion and comment back. So typically you want that to play out you don't want to do it during your May budget vote. You want to hold off for that. And you want to start talking about it in June. You can talk about it over the summer. But again, people will criticize the district if you try and vote over the summer or early fall, because they're going to say you tried to pull a fast one. We weren't paying attention. I think typically, and PR firms will tell you the exact same thing, typically the best time to vote, if you're going to vote this year, is late fall.
The best time for the board to vote, you say?
No, best time for the public vote. So the board can vote as late as 45 days prior to that. So early to mid-October, the board can decide to move ahead with a referendum. Now that you have SECRA, you can set a vote date and dollar amount and approve SECRA that night. And then you can proceed ahead with the 45-day advertising period and then vote in early December.
Why do you keep saying early December?
Megan,
It comes back to we're so afraid of failing again that we really have no idea where we stand. And we're trying as best as we can as individuals to reach out to our communities and kind of put the message out there. But truly, until we have a vote, we don't know what the community is feeling. Because even if we try to have these sessions where people come, there will always be a pocket of our population that we're not connecting with. So I think we need to stop being so afraid of having a vote that could fail, because we have a backup for May, right? If for some reason it didn't pass in the fall, it's not an off the table issue. We do have to fix our roofs. It becomes then, what do we do to incorporate it into the May vote next year? And if it passes, then we're no worse off. We're actually right where we want to be. But I don't see us doing anything differently than what we're doing right now if we just wait longer.
okay. I would tend to agree with you. My personal opinion is that there's a rule of bureaucracy, and that rule is everything takes longer than you think it will. So if we tried for early fall, we might end up with December. We might be able to get early fall, but I can't guarantee it. So let's try for fall.
Thank you.
Yes, Julie.
I was thinking of the marketing aspect that Mr. Simon brought up, and perhaps we could integrate into our social media. We have a lot of focus on students. Perhaps we could integrate into that social media subject about things around campus that have to do with facility upgrades, or just to start putting it in the messages that are going out on that side. We have thousands of followers, so.
Okay.
You know, my last word, then I won't say more on the topic, but the issue is not being afraid of failure. anything you do, there's a risk of failure. The issue is to prepare for success. Don't worry about failure. You just prepare for success. And that was what will make you successful in anything you do. And so I'm looking at, I'm not afraid of failure, but you do your homework so you will be successful. And if you look at the last bond issue, with many things that led to the downfall of the bond issue. But one of them that was like strike three was the fact that we did not market the bond effectively to the public. That was one of several things, but that was a key point. And the same thing here. We have to, don't worry about failure. Just keep your eye on success on what you have to do to be successful.
Okay, Chris?
Just, I know we all want to get out of here because we thought this would be a quick meeting. But I'd just like to say that perhaps we could, the board could on the June work session agenda, bring this up as a discussion topic to, because we discussed it before in March as a full board. We came to an agreement. There were delays put in place. So maybe once the budget passes in May, maybe our June work session could have a discussion on there about this again, to start bringing it up in public. We can even say, have a little debate, October, November, December, and then by the September work session, have that discussion and then decision and possibly have the start of the 40-day.
I'll push it earlier. We should have by July, right?
Okay, I'm just throwing out June work session if we could have a discussion item.
Ms. Raymond, can you write that down so that when we meet with Dr. Iverson, you make sure that that's
For
an issue for discussion?
by the July meeting.
June work session.
The June work session,
But to get it
hopefully,
approved till the 45 days
if the
starts.
board's on the same page, it could be an item in
Because we've
July,
gotten feedback
starting
from the
45 days.
committee, and they've already, those committees already recommended that we move
And the board
forward.
already discussed.
Right, and someone else has their hand raised.
Okay.
Carol?
I would like to point out that the last time we were talking about having a special vote, we had to work around the calendar of the Board of Elections since we use their equipment. And we could not use their equipment around the time of election day because they needed them. So unless we can try for early October, and I would suggest we try to do it for early October, otherwise get pushed into December.
I'll have Chrissy call and find out when we can have it.
It's a great point, Dr. Allen. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, other questions or comments?
No, that's an I move.
Yeah, okay. Oh, what's the size of the bond issue we're talking about?
12 million, 12, 13 million.
It was,
Okay, thank you.
and then we figured out that we could exclude part of the RJ.
No, ballpark, that's good enough. That's good.
Let's just call it 12.
That's it, well, well, good enough. Good
Well, no, you're right, because 12.
I thought-
No, we were gonna use, that's the size of the project, and then we used $3 million from the repair reserve fund that Jeff has added number.
So you know, like, the project will be
That's what
about
the board
12.
actually chose.
The project will be about 12, 13, the bond will be about 9.
Right.
Right.
Under 10.
I'll use it for tennis court.
Tennis court.
Right, so I move that we adjourn the meeting before we confuse the public about.
Amen.
I'll put it on the agenda next time. And on every agenda. All in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.